Welcome to Principles of Ecology. Today, we are going to explore a foundational concept called ecosystem energy flow. If you have ever wondered how a single ray of sunlight eventually powers a soaring eagle, or why our planet is covered in green plants but has relatively few top predators, you are in the right place. Energy is the ultimate currency of nature, and understanding how it moves through living systems is the key to understanding life itself. Let us dive in. To understand how energy flows in nature, let us start with something familiar, a paycheck. Imagine you earn $1,000. Before you can spend it on fun things, the government takes a tax, you pay rent, and you buy groceries. By the time you give some money to your little brother, you only have $100 left. If he pays his own expenses, he might only have $10 left to give a friend. This is exactly how energy works in nature. Instead of money, we are talking about energy from the sun. Plants capture this energy, but they spend a lot of it just to stay alive. When an animal eats the plant, it only gets a small fraction of that original energy. Now that we have an intuitive grasp, let us look at the formal scientific definition. Ecosystem energy flow is the unidirectional, or one-way, transfer of caloric energy through the various trophic levels of a food web. It all begins with solar radiation. Autotrophs, which are primary producers like plants and algae, capture this sunlight. Through the magnificent process of photosynthesis, they convert light energy into chemical energy. As this chemical energy is passed on to heterotrophs, the consumers like herbivores and carnivores, a significant portion is lost. This loss happens because organisms burn energy for cellular respiration and other metabolic processes, releasing it as heat into the environment. This continuous passing and losing of energy brings us to a crucial point. Biology is strictly governed by the laws of physics. Specifically, the laws of thermodynamics dictate this entire process. The first law, the conservation of energy, tells us that energy is simply changing forms, from sunlight to chemical bonds. But the second law, the law of entropy, is why energy is constantly lost as heat at each feeding step. Because of this unavoidable heat loss, energy cannot be recycled. It cannot flow backward from a wolf to a deer to a plant and back to the sun. Therefore, every ecosystem on Earth must be constantly replenished by fresh solar energy. Understanding these thermodynamic limits is absolutely critical because it explains why our natural world looks the way it does. It tells us why a forest has millions of plants and thousands of deer, but only a handful of wolves. Because energy is lost at each step, an ecosystem can only support a very small number of top predators. Wildlife managers use this concept daily to calculate how much land is needed to protect endangered carnivores like tigers. Furthermore, this has massive implications for human agriculture. By understanding that eating plants directly is far more energy efficient than feeding plants to cows and then eating the cows, scientists can better plan how to feed our growing global population. To make these concepts useful, we need to quantify them, which leads us to the mathematical representation of energy flow. We use a metric called trophic efficiency. The formula is TE equals PN divided by PN minus 1, all multiplied by 100. Let us break down these symbols. TE stands for trophic efficiency, which is the percentage of energy successfully transferred from one level to the next. PN represents the net production of energy at the current trophic level, usually measured in joules. Pn-1 represents the energy at the previous, lower trophic level. Physically, if the value of Pn increases while the praise energy stays the same, the efficiency increases, meaning the predator is better at converting food into body mass. Before we look at a real example, let us rearrange our formula to solve for a specific unknown. Often, we know how much energy the prey has, and we want to find out how much energy the predator will successfully store. By using basic algebra, we can isolate Pn. The formula becomes Pn equals Pn-1 multiplied by Te over 100. Conceptually, we are taking the energy of the previous level and multiplying it by the efficiency percentage. Dividing by 100 simply converts that percentage into a workable decimal fraction. This mathematical step represents the biological reality of digestion, filtering out the wasted energy and leaving us only with the energy that becomes new tissue. Now that we have our rearranged formula, let us apply it to a concrete example. Imagine a field of grass that captures and stores 10,000 joules of energy from the sun. A population of grasshoppers eats this grass. We will assume a standard trophic efficiency of 10%. We need to find the energy available at the grasshopper level, Pn. We substitute our known values into the equation. 10,000 joules for the grass, multiplied by 10 over 100. When we calculate this, we find the final answer is 1,000 joules. This means out of the massive 10,000 joules the grass had, the grasshoppers only stored 1,000. The missing 9,000 joules were lost as heat, used for movement, or excreted as waste. That previous example showed energy moving forward. But what if we need to work backward? Suppose we want to conserve a top predator and need to know how much plant life is required to support it. We rearrange our original efficiency formula once more, this time solving for Pn-1. The formula becomes Pn-1 equals Pn multiplied by 100 over Te. Physically, this tells us how much energy must exist at a lower level to support the level above it. Because efficiency is usually around 10%, this fraction acts as a multiplier, showing us that the level below must have significantly more energy to make up for the massive losses during digestion. Let us put this backward-working formula into practice with a multi-step problem. A hawk requires 500 kilocalories of energy per day to survive. The hawk eats snakes, snakes eat mice, and mice eat seeds. Assuming a 10% efficiency at every step, how many kilocalories of seeds are needed? We start at the top with the hawk, which is level 4, needing 500 kilocalories. To find the energy required at the snake level, level 3, we use our formula. We multiply the hawk's 500 kilocalories by 100 over 10, which is simply multiplying by 10. The final answer for this step is 5,000 kilocalories. The snakes must contain this much energy, so the hawk gets its required amount after the 90% loss. Now that we know the snakes need 5,000 kilocalories, we move one step further down the food chain, to the mice. The mice represent trophic level 2. We apply the exact same logic and formula. We take the 5,000 kilocalories required by the snakes and multiply it by our factor of 10. The calculation gives us a final answer of 50,000 kilocalories. This massive amount of energy must be present in the mouse population just to support the snakes above them. Again, we are seeing the multiplier effect of the 10% rule working in reverse. Every time we step down, the energy requirement explodes. Finally, we reach the foundational producer level, the plants and their seeds. The mice need 50,000 kilocalories. To find out how much energy the plants must produce, we multiply that 50,000 by 10 one last time. The final answer is a staggering 500,000 kilocalories of seeds. Think about what this physically means. The plants must produce 500,000 kilocalories of energy just to keep one single hawk alive at the top of the food chain. The energy loss across 4 trophic levels is immense, requiring a gigantic base of plant life to support a tiny apex predator population. To truly visualize the math we just did, let us look at the ecological energy flow pyramid. On the screen, you see a pyramid divided into 4 colored tiers. In the top left, the sun provides the initial energy. The wide green base represents the producers, starting with 10,000 joules. As we move up to the yellow primary consumers, the orange secondary consumers, and finally the red tertiary consumers at the very peak, the tiers shrink dramatically. Notice the large red arrows pointing out to the right at every single level? These represent the 90% of energy lost as heat and waste during each transfer. This diagram perfectly illustrates why food chains rarely exceed 4 or 5 levels. There is simply not enough energy left to sustain anything higher. We have covered a lot of ground today, so let us summarize the key takeaways. First, ecosystem energy flow is a one-way street. Energy moves from the sun through all living organisms, but it never cycles back. Second, because of the strict laws of thermodynamics, a massive amount of energy is lost as heat at every single feeding step. Third, this usually leaves only about 10% of the original energy available for the next trophic level. Finally, this rapid depletion dictates the entire structure of food webs, limiting the number of levels and explaining why top predators are so rare. By mastering this concept, you now hold the key to understanding the fundamental balance of every ecosystem on Earth. Great job today.